In today's video we'll be traveling on board of an Italian Intercity from Ventimiglia, what is just across the border from France into Italy, to Milan, Italy's second biggest city. Intercity trains in Italy are the non-high-speed long-distance trains. What it's like to travel on board of these trains that partially have a beautiful route along the coast as well. We're all about to find out in this video. Join me on board of this Intercity, what is on the French-Italian border, to Milano Centrale, one of the most beautiful railway stations I can imagine. But for now, let's get this video on the track and let's roll the intro. Before we start with this video, let's take a close look on the environmental impact if you're traveling on this route with train, car and plane. Well, of course trains won't clean the air, but I think this graph speaks for itself. Apart from the climate impact, also the energy resources that are needed for trains are way lower than any kind of other motorized transportation. This data is for the entire train route that I'll be taking today, from Nice in France to Milan in Italy. Nice is not too far away from Ventimiglia into France. For now, let's start with this video. Located along the coast, at the border with France, you will find the Italian town of Ventimiglia. Over here there's obviously also a railway station, and this is maybe one of the most important railway stations between France and Italy. There are lots of regional trains from France that will terminate here at this railway station in Italy, and this is also how I arrived here. We came from Nice and we had to change here on our way to Milan. And we planned some extra time in the town of Ventimiglia to just wander around a little bit. Although we couldn't spend that much time as we wanted because we were a little bit late in the morning. And by the way, in Nice I arrived there with a high-speed train from Paris, where I went to with another high-speed train from the Netherlands. And now I'm basically continuing my railway journey. The railway station of Ventimiglia is not super big. It's not a super big town either, so I guess that makes sense. This here is the main concourse. There are some shops basically everywhere. You can buy some souvenirs, buy some coffee, well, you name it. There's some vending machines for railway tickets, and there are quite a lot of ticket counters as well. Although I really have to say that using an app in Italy works absolutely great. Personally, I prefer to use the app of Trainline, and especially in Italy where you find several companies on some routes. There's a clear display with information about departing and arriving trains, and right before you go to the platforms there are some more shops, as you can see over here. Basically all platforms need to be accessed via platform number 1. Over here you find an underground passage to the other platforms. In terms of accessibility, I think there is some room for improvement over here, because I only noticed stairs at the underground passages to the other platforms. Maybe I just didn't look good. If you know if there are more accessible ways how to get to the platforms, please let me know in the comments. Throughout the railway stations there are several screens that will host information about departing and arriving trains, and right before you go to the platform you find these clear screens that will also host information about the first upcoming departure. At the platforms there are some vending machines for snacks and drinks. And I also noticed, but maybe this was just coincidence, that the trains that do depart and arrive from France do use the opposite track of the Intercity trains that are heading to Milan. So I think in general making the change is relatively easy, even though the accessibility of this railway station isn't that impressive. Today we'll be traveling on a locomotive haul train that will be both pushed and pulled by an Italian railway class E414 locomotive. These trains do have an original top speed of 250 km per hour, however the total top speed is nowadays 200 km per hour or 120 miles per hour. The top speed have been reduced after they have been reconverted. These locomotives have been built between 1994 and 1996, and in 2007 they have been reconverted for the Intercity trains. The exterior of our train today is not that exciting. At the side you will find clear numbers 1 and 2 that will indicate the first and the second class. Digital displays will indicate the train number, the route, the final destination and the carriage numbers. Tickets for these trains do come always including a seat reservation. If you're traveling with the use of an Interrail or Eurail pass, you're obligated to make a reservation as well. However, that's only €3 for the non-high-speed domestic trains within Italy. It's a quick interruption of this video. I hope you like this video so far. If you do so, or if it's a helpful video too, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or even if you just want to say hello, feel free to leave a comment. And if you'd like to see more trip reports about more sustainable ways of transportation, the main focus for this channel is long distance and or international traveling, then hit that subscribe button if you haven't done this already. For now, let's continue with this video. For now, let's start with the train tour. And I'll start off with the second class. Second class comes just like basically everywhere in a 2x2 configuration, so 2 seats on both sides of the aisle. Something you will find a lot in Italy are seats facing each other. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this. I like the long distance bus seat compositions or the airline style seat compositions. But you find some of those as well in these trains. Of course, throughout the train there are overhead luggage racks for your luggage. And in the middle of the carriages there's some extra space for luggage as well. I prefer this to be in the middle, because there are quite some seats facing each other with a bigger table in between. Between the back ends of the seats there's also quite a lot of space for suitcases. For now, let's do a seat tour of the slightly less common long distance bus seat composition or the airline style seat compositions. You find a sturdy fold-out table in the seat in front of you. A handle below the seats can be used to slightly recline the seats. A small litter bin is located at the side, and this is also where you find a power socket. Like I already mentioned, between the back ends of the seats there's quite a lot of space for luggage. The seats that do face each other, so the base seats, do have a bigger table in between. You can find the power sockets right at the sides. Basically every seat has its own power socket, and you can fold these tables out to make them slightly bigger. At the side you find a small litter bin, and all windows do have a sunscreen. The handle to recline the seats can be found right under the seats. And altogether I think this is a good second class product. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the base seats, so seats facing each other, I like these trains. And even though these are semi-long distance trains, don't expect too much of these trains. I mean, there are no dedicated zones, for example if you're traveling with a little kid, or quiet zones. But the second class has just mainly these compartments and that's it. Between the carriages, so at the vestibules, you find some more information about the train, so the carriage numbers will be displayed. You find also special numbers at the doors for the carriage numbers. And at some spots you also find screens, although this is very limited. Between the second and the first class there's another carriage. And even though this is second class, over here the layout is a little bit different, and you also find some spots for if you're traveling with a bike. You can even charge e-bikes over here. This here is the accessible carriage, where there's a lot of space for passengers in a wheelchair, for example. Because this train is not really accessible, if you're traveling in a wheelchair, you find these special ramps and you need to request assistance at the station. The seat layout comes in a 2x1 configuration, just like in the first class. However, because these are second class seats, the aisle is much wider. If you're traveling with a bike on these trains, it's obligated to make a reservation, so keep this in mind, you can't just hop on. And the same thing for the tickets for these trains, they always do come including a reservation. Let it be no surprise that the bigger accessible toilet, that is also usable as a diaper changing facility for if you're traveling with a little baby, is also located right next to the accessible area. This toilet is a bit more spacious and also has some support handlebars. The regular toilets, you'll find a lot of them, and this is how the regular toilets look like. Pretty fine, and most important, at least during my trip, everything was clean. There were even some cleaners on the way, and I really like these seats in Italian trains. They just pop up automatically, ideal for people who don't know how to hit the target. Even though there's not a real dining car in this train, you only find some vending machines, there is something like a dining car, and I found out during this journey that I appreciate this more than some other railway companies that do have a real staffed dining car but with a smaller selection of food and drinks. You can take a sit here as well, and you can pay both with cash and cards. However, keep in mind that if you want to pay with cards, you can only do this if there is a mobile network. And the coverage wasn't always that good during this train ride. Right next to the dining car you also find the area for the railway staff. So you can find them in Genoa over here. There are two first class carriages and the first class comes in a 2x1 configuration. The seats are wider, there's more leg room and the comfort level is just better as well. It's not the best first class I ever had, but it's definitely not bad at all. You won't find dedicated luggage racks within the first class. However, because you find less seats, the overhead luggage racks do provide quite a good amount of luggage space as well. And just like in the second class, between the back ends of the seats you find quite a lot of space for your luggage. Just like in second class, the base seats do have a table in between. You can fold out to make it slightly bigger. There's a little bin at the side, you find power sockets, and there's a handle right under the seats you can use to recline the seats. Basically it's the same as second class, however the seats are more comfortable, they're a bit wider and there's a little bit more surface. Well, basically the surface was that we got this towel to wipe our hands for hygienic reasons. I mean, these trains are not wow, but they're definitely good enough for a journey that takes up to about 4 hours. And the total travel time between Ventimiglia and Milan is a little bit less than that. For the last bit of the video, I'll just show you some views from the train. Especially the first section of the route until Genova is really scenic along the coast. Welcome to Milan Central railway station. This is a beautiful railway station. I will not feature it this time. I already have 2 videos where I do this. You can find them in the description of this video. Anyway, I hope you liked this video and or this has been a helpful video to you. If so, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And if you'd like to see more trip reports or more sustainable ways of transportation, the main focus for this channel is long distance and or cross-bordering traveling, then hit that subscribe button if you haven't done this already. before we really end this video, one last thing. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope you liked this video or this has been a helpful video to you. If you are interested in other trip reports, of course you can find them on this channel. However, in the description of this video on YouTube, you also find a link to a map, and on this map you can also find all trip reports, but then on a map.